So one thing we need to talk about is the acuplacer. If you are taking CCP pre-calc next year, I thought you were crying. You okay?
No, I'm fine.
I think you'll be okay in CCP pre-calc next year. Okay. CCP pre-calc next year. If you're taking CCP, you have to take the math acuplacer. Now, when you sign up, there are two math acuplacers. They're like the AAF and the QAS. Take both of them because you can get a score on either one to qualify. So technically you get 2 opportunities. And then you could take it again, so you get 2 more opportunities. So technically you have 4 opportunities, not 2. Okay, so take both portions. Take both portions. So it is being offered here at Lake after school on the 6th and on the 11th. Those are conference nights for us. That is next Tuesday and the following Thursday, or next Thursday and the following Tuesday. So take a look at those dates. If those don't work for you, okay, if that doesn't work for you, you can sign up to take it at the university, okay, at Kent State Start Campus. All right, there is information that has been given to you about the CCP packet. It's a whole packet. There's a couple places you can find it. You can find it with your scheduling. You guys were given scheduling information. It's there. It's been put out on Parent Square. Let me show you where you can find it on here, because let me tell you, it's not easy. If you go to Lake Local Schools and you go to departments and you go to counseling, okay, so Lake Local Schools, departments, and counseling, and then you want high school. Okay, and then you want scheduling. So down here, scheduling information. And then the scheduling presentation is or CCP presentation right there. I think it'll be in there somewhere. Okay, so you'll have to go, let me. Eligibility, participants, eligibility. I'm trying to find conditional. I don't know if this is where I need to be. I'm trying to find the CCP. Does anybody know for sure where this is? Athletic eligibility. Next steps. No. Okay, CCP packet right here on slide 29. Okay. So that's the packet that you need right here. And in this packet on page 4, I believe, did I go too far? 4. Right here is how you sign up. Students must sign up here for the acuplacer.
Say you were to pass on the first time, do you have to take it the second?
No, absolutely not. Yeah, you'll know when you walk out the door.
Okay,
Yep. You'll know when you walk out the door.
Like if you pass, like I didn't know.
It didn't. It just said math. Then you must have signed up for both. They must automatically. I hounded the guidance counselors about making sure you guys take both.
Is it easy to sign up?
Yeah. Is it easy to sign up, Drew? Yeah.
Put it on.
Okay. All right. Questions about acuplacer and CCP? All right. You guys ready to rock and roll on the second half of chapter 5? Did Dad make it home or did you have to stay?
No, he's
home. You doing good?
Yep.
It's a pencil man.
No, that's
It's full. So I gotta go
I don't think you need your calculators. Oops, I gave you one today. It is?
so Debbie taking us for us to go to Start State.
Are you sure about that?
Yeah.
I went to counseling this morning. And what they say?
They said it's full here.
You're kidding.
You have to go to the campus to take it. Yeah, they said they were gonna close it down yesterday.
And that's what they said?
Can they like add a cost?
That's Jerry Bull.
Josh, did you sign up yet? Looks like we're going to Kent together.
I didn't know we had to start.
Stark, Kent State Stark campus.
Yeah, Kent Stark.
Yes.
They say you taking me?
Yeah, you could. You could sign up at Stark City. I mean, I guess.
Well, that is a bummer. I did not know that.
That's a bummer.
Somebody to answer their phone.
Did anybody even know sign up for that?
Yeah, I actually told me yesterday. Yeah,
It's just like just has always tests.
I know, like,
All right, you should
Signed up. We're not finishing those ones out late.
What?
So now you have to.
I got you.
I don't think that's gonna happen.
What?
Rector was to like slide.
Oh.
I'm gonna have to. I'm gonna go like.
I said, what about park play do right there?
Okay, not one person's answering the phone there down there, so I'll have to get back to you on that. All right, so if that's the case, you have to sign up to take it down at Stark State, and it's easy to do down there too. You just schedule a time and you go in and you take it down there. It's easy. Okay. All right. Up here, section 5.5. We're going to talk about operations on functions. Operations on functions. And remember, okay, a function is f of x equals something. So you have learned how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide polynomials. Hi, Aaron. Thanks for returning my call. I'm talking about the acupuncture to my classes, and I was talking to, and one of my students just mentioned that it could hold. Yes, they do have to go to Stark State to take it.
You're kidding.
Wow. Okay, all right. I just wanted to make sure that was accurate information.
Ask her if they're.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. Bye. Okay, 100 students signed up to take it, so yes, you guys do have to go to Stark State.
100? There's that many.
Oh, there's an accident.
But it counts all the acuplacers that we've offered,
It's
like
for marketing and stuff.
marketing and Spanish and computer science, and it's not just this math class.
Oh, I mean, I guess.
Yeah, plus there's like 90 of you guys that take it. So there's a lot of students that take the acuplacer. Okay? All right. They used to never offer it to you guys here. It's a relatively new thing. All right, so I'll have to make that announcement. Sign up Stark State. So you have learned to add, subtract, multiply, and divide polynomials. We can also do this for functions. So let's take a look at this little chart. Okay, and I think it's blank on your guided notes. You're going to start seeing some notations that look different, but the operation is still the same. Let's assume f of x is equal to 5x and g of x is equal to x plus 2. What type of functions are those? Linear, quadratic, cubic? Linear. Both of those would be lines. What's the domain of both of those functions? All real numbers. Okay, that's going to come into play here in a little bit. The first one says, when you see this, f plus g of x, that means f of x plus g of x. That's what they want you to do. All they want you to do here is add f of x and g of x. So all you would do is take f of x, which is what? 5x, and add g of x, which is x plus 2. So you're going to add those two functions together. Well, this is algebra 1. What's 5x plus x plus 2? 6x plus 2. So we're done. We're done. Addition. It just looks different. F plus f g or f of x plus g of x. Next one, subtraction. Well, f minus g of x is the same thing as f of x minus g of x. So now, the only thing is you have to be careful here, because what am I subtracting? I'm subtracting f of x minus that quantity. So what do you have to do with your negative sign? Distribute it. So you would really have 5x, and then you'd have what? Minus x and minus 2. So what's 5x minus x? 4x minus 2. Perfect. Are we good there? All right. Well, the next one is multiplication. If you see FG, what's the invisible sign between F and G? Okay, so it just means f of x times g of x. So we're just going to take f of x and we're going to multiply it by g of x. So distribute. And when you guys distribute, what's 5x times x? 5x squared. And what's 5x times 2? 10x. Okay, so there's my multiplication. Now, as with everything in math, when you get to division, there's always going to be a little bit more of a trick. If you see f divided by g of x, that just means f of x divided by g of x. So what's f of x? 5x divided by what? X plus 2. Is everybody okay so far? Now, the only thing is, what's the denominator of a fraction never allowed to be? 0, right? Jill says 0. Do you guys agree with that? You can't have it. What's 5 divided by 0? 0. Can't divide by 0. What would make this denominator 0? Negative 2. So what's x not allowed to be? It's allowed just negative 2, right? It's allowed to be less. It just can't be negative. So on these fraction ones, you got to watch. Because the denominator is not allowed to be 0, so x is not allowed to be negative 2. You must always tell me that. Questions on that one? Okay, this is also important. The domains of the sum, the difference, the product, and the quotient consist of the x values that are in the domain of both x and y, and the quotient does not include the x value for which the denominator is 0. Okay, so that's why we said in that last one, x cannot be negative 2. We'll keep working with the domains. The domains will be your hardest part tonight. All right, we're not doing B, we're only doing A, so if you run into B's spot, don't worry about it. Let's take a look at A. Let f of x be 3 times the square root of x. Let g of x be negative 10 times the square root of x. Find f plus g of x. State the domain. Evaluate f plus g of 4. All right, so first thing I always do is I come off to the side and I think, what is the domain of just f of x? Because remember, it said the domain has to be the domain of f and g, and we got to think about the final function. So what's the domain of f of x? So let's look at f of x. What could you guys tell me about the values of x? Yeah, I have a square root function. Do I have to be careful? What's x have to be? I heard it. Okay, positive. So how do we say positive? Greater than or equal to 0. Do you guys see? You can't put square root of negative 1 or negative 2 or negative 3. You have to have 0 or more. Okay? How about the domain of g of x? Is it the same thing? Is it also going to be x is greater than or equal to 0? Okay, so I always come off to the side and think of f of x and g of x. Now I'm going to come and do what it asked me to do. It asked me to find f plus g of x. So it wants f of x plus g of x. So f of x was what? 3 square root of x plus g of x, which is, well, I'm not going to put plus a negative. I'm just going to put what? Negative 10. So I did f of x plus negative 10, so minus 10 square root of x. What is 3 square root of x minus 10 square root of x? So this is negative 7 square root of x. So f plus g of x is equal to negative 7 square root of x. What's the domain of that function? What's the domain of this function? Okay, so they're all x is greater than or equal to 0, x is greater than or equal to 0, x is greater than or equal to 0. So what's your domain? They're all the same, so it's what? X is greater than or equal to 0. You'll see in a minute when that changes. Okay, now we're going to evaluate f plus g of 4. What do they want you to do with the 4? Just plug it in for what? X. Okay, what's the square root of 4? And what's the operation between the negative 7 and the square root of 4? Multiplication. So what do you guys get when you multiply? Negative 14. So this is negative 14. So there's your first part. Please make sure you answer all the questions tonight. Are we good on it? Okay, now we're going to go here. F of x is 3x to the third minus 2x squared plus 5, and g of x is x to the third minus 2x squared plus 4x minus 2. Domain. Let's think about f of x. What is the domain? It's a cubed function. What's the domain? All real numbers. Jill says all real numbers. I heard somebody else over there say it. Is it all real numbers? Guys, think about it. X to the third. X to the third looks like this. Does it gradually go left forever, gradually go right forever? Yeah. It is all real numbers. Okay? What about g of x? Is it also cubic? So is it also all real numbers? Mm-hmm. Okay, what do they want you to find? They want you to find f minus g of x. So what do they want you to do? They want you to take f of x and subtract. Okay, I'm going to move this over. Subtract. So we're going to take f of x, which is 3x to the third minus 2x squared plus 5. And when I subtract g of x, what do I have to do with g of x? Okay, put it in parentheses and distribute. Some of you will distribute right away. So some of you will start at this step. When you guys distribute, what do y'all get? I'm going to get popsicle sticks. Oh, stop talking. Minus what? X cubed plus 3x squared minus 4x plus 2. And now what do you get when you combine like terms? So I can put those together. So I get what? 2x to the third. How about here? Plus 1x squared. How about here? Minus 4x. And how about on the end? Plus 7. Okay, so this is my subtraction. Well, what can you tell me about the domain of this function? Okay, so we got all real numbers, so this is all real numbers. We'll get to one where they're different in a minute. Trust me. For now, they're all real numbers for everything, so that's your domain. All right, now it wants us to find f minus g. Let me erase this because I'm not going to do it. All right, f minus g of negative 2. So we want to find f minus g of negative 2. So what are we going to do with negative 2? Plug it in. So I have 2 times negative 2 to the third plus, now be careful, that negative 2 squared must be in parentheses if you're using your calculator. So yes, I guess you do need your calculator, those of you who ask me. Some of you will. Some of you will do it in your head. Some of you will grab your calculator. If you do it in your calculator, make sure you put these in parentheses. And what'd you guys get? Did you get 3? All right. Okay, questions on adding, subtracting functions. Pretty easy. Are we good? Okay, now let's go to multiplying and dividing. So let's think about our domain. Let's think about the domain of f of x. Here's f of x. It's x squared. Parabola. What's your domain? All real numbers. So all real numbers. G of x, excuse me. Domain of g of x. Ooh. Okay, this one is what? X is greater than or equal to 0. Okay. Now, if I were to stop now, you go with your most restricted domain. So what's the most restrictive domain? X is greater than or equal to 0. Okay, so right now, if I were to stop, my domain is x is greater than or equal to 0. But we got to see what it is once we multiply them. So now they want me to find f times g of x. So they want me to take x squared and multiply it by what? Square root of x. So if you're like me, you're kind of going, how do I multiply x squared by the square root of x? Okay, think back to last chapter, last quiz. How else could I write x square root of x? X to the 1/2. Do you guys see that? X squared times x to the 1/2. Now, what do I do when I have x squared times x to the 1/2? When you multiply powers, you what? Add. So what is 2 plus 1/2? Not 3/2. Okay, that's not 2 plus 1. It would be 4/2 plus 1/2.
Oh, because there's 2.
Yeah. So it'd be how many halves? It's x to the 5/2. Now, what is the domain of this function? Think about it. What is this function? Write it as a radical. Square root of x to the 5th. X is greater than or equal to 0. So what's your total most restricted domain? X is greater than or equal to 0. Are you guys okay with that? You go with the most restricted domain. We have all real numbers greater than or equal to 0, greater than or equal to 0, so it's greater than or equal to 0. Okay, now we're going to find when x is what? What's it say? 9. Okay, so now we're going to find f times g. Sorry, there is a different notation. Of 9. So that means 9 to the 5/2. Well, guys, remember, this just means the what root of what? Square root of 9 to the 5th. What's the square root of 9? And what is 3 to the 5th? 243. Good. So far, I would say everything we've done has not been too bad. Would you guys agree? Division's always where it gets a smidge harder. Let's take a look. Start with your original domains. What's the domain of f of x? All real numbers. Because it's what? 6x. What kind of a function is that? Linear. It's a line. Okay. How about g of x? Okay, we got to be careful. What's the domain? X to the 3/4. That's the what root of what to the what? 4th root of x to the 3rd. 4th root. X still has to be greater than or equal to 0 because you cannot take the fourth root of a negative number. So X has to be greater than or equal to 0. So far, what's my most restrictive domain? Greater than or equal to 0. Are we good? Now, when we go to this part and we do F divided by G of X, this is what always gets students. We're going to start with G of X divided by X to the 3/4. What is the denominator not allowed to be? 0. So the domain of this, okay, X, or we got to remember, X is not allowed to be what? So, but that's not really the domain. We just have to keep in mind that X cannot be what? So what's the domain of your whole function? We got all real numbers that are greater than or equal to 0, but not equal to 0. Greater than 0. So the domain of my function is everything greater than 0. Let me go through that again. It's all real numbers that are greater than or equal to 0, but not equal to 0. So that is everything greater than equal to 0. Greater, yeah, just greater than 0. Does that make sense? Okay, now let's clean this up. I've got an X in the numerator, X in the denominator. Now, what's my numerator? What's this exponent? Okay, 1, which is 4/4. So if I have X to the 4/4 over X to the 3/4, what's that give me? 6X to the 1/4. But you always have to look at your original problem. Remember when I say substitute back in, always substitute back into the original problem? Same thing. You look at your original problem, X is not allowed to be 0. Okay, now plug in 16. So what is F over G of 16? Why do you think I picked 16? It's a perfect 4 through. This is 4 through to 16. What's a 4 through to 16? 2. And what's 6 times 2? 12. All right. Thoughts on that one? Whew. Right? Okay. These next ones, you've got to be careful tonight because the directions ask you to do a lot of things. What does it ask you to do first? Find what? Oh. Asks you to find FG of X. Then it asks you to find divide. Then it asks you to find, and it asks you to find. So there's what? 4 answers. Oh my goodness. Okay. Let's start with the first one. Well, let's look at our two functions. Let's look at f of x. What is the domain of f of x? F of x equals 3x. What's my domain? All real. It's just 3x. That's linear. What about g of x? Well, be careful. It's a 1/5. The 5th root of x. Can we take the 5th root of any number? Yeah, go back to cube roots for a minute because that's more familiar in our head. What's cube root of negative 27? Negative 3. What's cube root of negative 8? Negative 2. What's cube root of 0? 0 is cube root of 1. 1. What's cube root of 27? 3. Is a domain over. Can you take the cube root of any number? So can you take an odd root of any number? So it's a domain of an odd root. All right, so far we have no restrictions. It's all real numbers. All right, first thing, it asks us to find FG of x. So what's it want us to do for that one? It wants you to what? Multiply. 3 of x times x to the 1/5. Okay, multiplying powers, what do you do to the exponents? How many fifths do you have here? So you're going to add 5/5 plus 1/5, so you get 3x to the what? 6/5. Are we good there? Now, I'm going to jump to the blue part. Okay? And I'm just going to say, okay, so let's find FG of 32. So 3 times 32 to the 6/5. Well, let's look at 32 to the 6/5. What is it asking me to, what's it asking you to find? 5th root of 32 to the 6th. What's the 5th root of 32? To the 6th. Well, 2 to the 5th is 32, so 2 to the 6th would be 64. And what is 64 times 3? 192. Oh, forgot the domain of this one. Does it even ask us the domain? We should say it. What about the domain of that one? Okay, we said all real numbers, all real numbers. All real numbers. So what's the domain? All real numbers. So are we good with the first one? All right. Now we're going to switch gears and divide. F divided by G of X. So now I got F of X, which is 3X, divided by X to the 1/5. What do we have to keep in mind? X cannot be what? X cannot be 0. Cannot, anytime you divide, ding, 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 denominator can't be 0. What makes my denominator 0? In this case, it's 0. X can't be 0. All right, well, this is 1, which is how many fifths? 5/5. So what's 5/5 minus 1/5? So I have 3x to the 4/5. And what's my domain? It's all real numbers, but not what? So it's just x cannot be 0. It's all real numbers other than 0. Okay? All right, now we got to find f divided by g of 32. F divided by g of 32. So now we're going to do 3 times 32 to the 4/5. So what's 32 to the 4/5 mean? 5th root of 32, which is
2.
to the 4th, which is 16. What's 3 times 16? What do you guys think? Yeah? Can you handle it?
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to give you time to get started. I'm not going to do the last one. Actually, maybe I'll pass back your quizzes.
Yeah.